laying out some broad new guidelines for stricter enforcement of immigration laws. And this move is getting mixed reaction. So joining us now is Dan Stein. He's president of the Federation for American Immigration Reform, or FAIR as they call themselves. He supports Mr. Trump's moves on immigration. We also have Andre Segura. He's a staff attorney for the ACLU. He opposes Mr. Trump's actions. Gentlemen, great to see both of you. Andre, let me start with you. What's your biggest concern about the new guidelines as Mr. Trump has laid them out?
Where do we start? This is bringing to life President Trump's worst and most divisive campaign rhetoric. And it's, like I've said before on this program, we have to take the president at his word, and he's going to bring these things to life. 10,000 new ICE agents throughout the interior. I think people have a misconception that this is not going to affect them in their daily lives, but when you have more ICE agents throughout the country, when you have more state and local officers doing immigration enforcement, you're going to see an uptick in racial profiling. Communities are going to become less safe.
Dan, what do you like about it?
Look, people come here illegally. That doesn't mean they just have the right to stay. You take a look at all these orders. If you're here illegally, you need to be thinking about going out and buying some luggage, because, as Spicer made it clear, Trump administration says if you're here illegally, you remain deportable, with the exception of the so-called DACA group. Yeah. And that's a dramatic change. Look, nobody ever decided in this country that immigration was unlimited, that you could break the immigration law and then demand to stay, that you could jump in front of the line in front of millions of people who respect our laws all over the world and just come in and say, okay, I'm here, I don't have to go. Right. If you enforce these laws, we can reclaim our schools, our hospitals, and our communities once again for the American people.
Andre, Dan has laid it out exactly as the other side feels it. They broke the law. They came here without the proper procedure. Full stop. End of story. What do you say to him?
It's not the end of the story. And Mr. Stein has gone further. Yesterday he called this Christmas in February, which is horrible. I think he's living outside of reality. These are our neighbors. These are our communities. These aren't just people who are the most serious criminals that President Trump keeps talking about. This is everyone.
Right, but they didn't do it the right way. Address that. They didn't do it the right way. Why encourage that kind of illegal procedure?
Look, this is a reality. This is the reality that we live with. There are 11 million undocumented people in this country. They are our neighbors. They're part of our community. They're part of the fabric of this country. And we need a humanitarian response to how we handle that. We cannot, and it is unrealistic to just say, now you're out. These are people who are law-abiding residents of this country and what really would make our country great.
Hey, Dan, I mean, I think that Andre has fastened on something, many different layers. There are 11 million of them at best calculation. So even if you don't like it, the impracticality of how you're going to now, I mean, under these broad guidelines, all of them are eligible for deportation because they've all broken the law. So do you predict mass deportations?
Clearly, there are only so many resources, and the administration has their priorities. But look, what's so important to FAIR, and really we think what was the issue in this campaign, is that the Trump administration is walking back what we feel was former President Obama's broad expansion of executive authority to bring in aliens really without limit, outside the law, and then provide class-based protections for which there was no provision in law. And what Trump is saying, he says, look, if Congress wants to provide some kind of amnesty program legislatively, you know, that's fine. But as far as we're concerned, we have a charge and obligation to carry out these laws. And any true meaningful reform would start by saying, okay, let's assume there's 11 million people here illegally. Why are they here? Let's engineer the process by which they were able to come and stay, why they have not been put in removal proceedings. And that's what the Trump administration is doing at all these different levels. And what people don't understand is that after 1994-95, Congress has given the executive broad and important powers in controlling immigration. But for 8 years, the Obama administration refused to enforce those laws. Now what they're simply doing is going back to a process, a normalization, if you will, of rigorous, regular immigration enforcement that's consistent with the social contract and our role as a sovereign nation.
Your reaction?
Unfortunately for Mr. Stein, people here have rights. They are here, so let's now move forward. What are we going to do with people? But people have rights. They have rights under the Fourth Amendment.
They don't have the right to live here.
Under due process. They have the right to seek immigration relief if they have viable claims. It is impractical to say that people are just going to be let out of this country and move and pack their bags, as Mr. Stein is claiming. But we have to think, as an American people, soundly reject this. 3 out of 4 favor legalization over deportation.
Hey, Dan.
Not true.
Dan, hold on a second. I want to ask you about this very curious provision, and I just want to ask you how it's going to work. Okay, so here's what it says. The U.S. will aim to send any unauthorized border crossers from Central America to Mexico as they await deportation hearings. So Mexico has to take the Hondurans and the El Salvadorans. How are we, as the U.S., going to force Mexico to take them?
Well, apparently Donald Trump has lots of, arrows in his quiver. He has lots of carrots, including various leverage on who's going to fund the wall, right? But from a procedural process standpoint, aliens who are inside the U.S. and who have been here for a while are entitled to constitutionally protected minimum due process standards, which FAIR supports. The American people support those protections, and that's called a deportation hearing. But that doesn't mean you're not going to get removed at the end of it, and it doesn't mean that the order is not going to be executed once the final order issued. Now, aliens who are at the border, they enjoy only the procedural process which Congress has provided. And so putting them temporarily across the border while you process them gives the government enormous procedural leverage in how to handle aliens versus once they get physically into the U.S.
Okay, do you, hold on, Ned. Do you understand how that's going to work?
I don't understand how that's going to work, and I think the president is really trying to find a way to divert attention, but at the end of it, fundamentally, these are mothers and children who are coming from Central America trying to seek refuge in our country. This is who we are as Americans. We need to accept them. I've been along the border. I've been in detention facilities in really remote locations and interviewed mothers and children who are fleeing real violence. We should be taking them in. We should be asking ourselves, who do we want to be as Americans? Do we want to be welcoming? Do we want to be humanitarian? Or do we want extremist policies like that that are supported by FAIR?
Dan, I'm sorry, we have to leave it there, but we will obviously continue to have
He's talking about unlimited immigration. When did the ACLU stand for unlimited immigration?
I did not say that.
Okay, okay, look, just address that. So he's saying that you're saying open borders. Anybody who is fleeing any sort of persecution should be able to come here.
If someone is fleeing persecution, they should be able to come here and make a case for asylum.